just want to welcome you to our second of the year, 2019, to the PEP Talk, the end time perspective of where we think we are. And so I want to bring a message that I shared with the church on Sunday. Now, last week was just thinking, well, Lord, what do you want me to say this Sunday? And the Lord clearly said, I want you to have a look at the blood moons. So that's a subject I know really well, and you can go on our website and find out all the chats about blood moons of 2017, the 4 blood moons of 2014 and 15. But now I just thought, okay, I'll go down that road, and this is what I found. I didn't go onto YouTube. I didn't find what other people were saying. I just want the Holy Spirit to really help me and direct me. And I found some interesting things that I shared on Sunday. There was a super blood moon. It was this blood moon which was a total lunar eclipse. And it was on Monday night going through to Tuesday, so the 20th and the 21st. And it lasted around about 3.5 hours. Now, I set my alarm and I got up, and my wife did the same, and we got up and we couldn't see anything because it was just cloudy outside. It was horrible. We're in the middle of winter, and yet it's quite a nice day here today. So I thought, well, okay, I didn't see it. But we've also got 2 supermoons. And the supermoons, one happens on February the 19th and 20th. And then the second supermoon happens on March the 21st, 22nd. So it starts in the evening, goes through to the next day. And we now know that they're called, the first one is called, the blood moon was called the wolf moon. They're all names taken from Native American Indians that signify different times of the season. So the second one that we saw was the snow moon. It was the significance of the snow falling. And then the last one is the worm moon, which means the worms are coming up to the top of the surface, all signifying times and seasons. But here it is, folks. We are in times and seasons. These things are being shown to us from the Lord as times and seasons, as we know they're signals. So here we have the first blood moon on January the 20th. It will not be seen again until May of 2021. Very, very, I feel, prophetically significant, the meaning of this blood moon. It's incredible. This first blood moon, when it was seen, is going to be seen over most of America. We'll see it, especially North America, parts of Southern America, but predominantly over Europe. So I think they are definite signs and signals from the Lord to what is coming. And we have to try and get our prophetic head on to find out, Lord, what are you saying in this? Because there's some other significant things happening around this time. So let's go to the scriptures. Genesis 1:14 says, and the Lord said, God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heavens to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and seasons, for the days and years. Well, the signs and seasons here are 2 words. It says moed and mikra, which means they're dress rehearsals for the real thing. But they're signals to us. And it says in Psalm 19 verses 1 to 4, it says, and the heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament shows his handiwork. Day utters unto speech, and the night unto night reveals knowledge. There is no speech nor language, it says, where their voice is not heard. Their line has gone throughout all of the earth, and their words to the ends of the world. In them he has set a tabernacle up for the sun. So what's it talking about? It says that if you look out the stars and the moons and all the alignments of the planets, there's speech. But they have no voice. There's speech, they're there. But it says they go right the way around the whole of the world to see. Why? So we have no excuse. We have no excuse. But the body of Christ have lost this, because they're so worried about how the New Age and all of us have captured this and taken it away from us. But it was ours first. The Lord, it says, named every sun, every star, and every planet in there. It's ours first, folks, and we've got to reclaim it. So what is God saying in the alignment of the stars and the moons, and especially the moon and the sun? Because it says here in Joel 2 verse 28 to 31, it says, and it shall come to pass afterwards that I shall pour out my spirit on flesh. Your sons and your daughters shall prophesy. Your old men shall dream dreams. Your young men shall see visions. And also my maidservants and my manservants. And that word man, servants and maidservants is the prophetic voice. God has his prophets and prophetesses out there. But we're too liberal about saying she's a prophet of God or he's a prophet of God. We've got to be very careful. But God does have his true prophets out there and prophetesses. And I will pour out my spirit in those days. I will show wonders in the heavens and in the earth. Blood and fire and pillars of smoke. The sun shall be turned into darkness and the moon into blood before the coming and the great day and the awesomeness of God's return. That's what it's signifying. These are signals for us to find out where we are. And then we see in Luke 21, 25 and 28. And it says also Matthew 24, 29 and 31 and Mark 13, 24, 27. And there shall be signs in the moon and in the sun and in the stars and on the earth's distress of nations with perplexity and the sea and the waves roaring. That's talking about tsunamis. And it says these words, and men's heart failing them from fear. And that word failing means literally in the old Greek, it means that they shall die. People will have heart attacks when they see these things happening on the earth with the tsunamis and the earthquakes and the volcanoes when they start erupting. People are going to go, what's happening? And they're going to literally, their hearts aren't going to be able to take it. And it says, the fear and expectation of all these things that are coming in the earth, for the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Then they shall see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and great glory. Now when these things begin to happen, look up and lift up your heads, because your redemption draws near. And then the last one from Revelation. I mean, there are hundreds. There are so many in the Bible. I've just picked out a few. But here is Revelation 6, verses 12 to 13. And I looked, and when he opened the sixth seal, and behold, there was a great earthquake. When the earthquakes happen and volcanoes happen, it will shake the earth. But when the volcano happened in Iceland, it literally blackened the sun. You couldn't see the sun. And I think this is perfectly describing this. And it says, the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became like blood. And the stars of heaven fell on the earth, as the fig tree dropped its late leaves when it is shaken by a mighty wind. And that whole thing of the stars falling and the fig tree, that's a whole different talk in itself. You've got two different talks there. But let's move on. You see, what people are saying now, that maybe the rapture will happen, or the end of the world will happen. I don't believe that we've got that. I don't believe this is going to be the rapture, and I certainly don't believe this is the end of the world. I am not saying that. But what I am saying, these are signals and seasons that we have to recognise that we're in. Because I believe it's threefold. I believe it has to do with the nation of Israel. And the Lord says that Israel is like a millstone around the world's nations' necks. And as we can't open up our newspapers or television without Israel being on it. But it's also what's going to be happening in the world. But also as well the church. And then when I say the church, it's going to be twofold. It's going to be what I would call the true church. Because we know from the end times there's an apostate church that's going to arise up. And that's a judgment in itself. But this is for the true church. The true church that have got their eyes fixed on Jesus. They're about one thing, building the kingdom. The kingdom, not church. The kingdom. So, these are signals from heaven, from God himself, to those who understand the significance of these signals and these signs in the heavens. You see, I believe that we were about to see Isaiah 17:1, the destruction of Damascus. We're about to see that happen. Israel are bombing all around Damascus at this moment in time. There are so many sorties going into Syria and over Damascus, where the Israel are bombing the positions of Iran and Hezbollah. And don't forget, Saddam Hussein, moved out all of his weapons of mass destruction and put them where? Many think it was in Damascus. What happens if one of these bombs hit these super weapons? These weapons of mass destruction. It says that Damascus ceases to exist in an instant. Think about it. And I believe that we're about to see this. That will lead into either Psalm 83 or Ezekiel 38. Yeah, that's a further talk that I've done and I want to produce, and bring to you before. But I believe that we're at the brink of Psalm 83, not Ezekiel 38. But that's a whole different topic. But I don't want to bring any controversy. So we see on this on this day, on this past Monday, the 21st and 22nd, the blood moon. But a year ago, I gave a talk about this because a year ago it was the first year anniversary on Donald Trump's presidentship. This super blood moon is right in the middle of his first term of office. But did you know that Donald Trump, he was born on the 14th of June 1946. Guess what? On a blood moon. And 700 days later, what do we see? 1948, May of, the birth of Israel. And as we also know, the inauguration of Donald Trump, he was 70 years old, 7 months and 7 days old. That's incredible. And we know that 7 is perfect completion. Perfect completion. But I also believe that Donald Trump, on the 70th anniversary, there we go, the 70th anniversary of Israel as being a nation, recognises Jerusalem as the true capital of Israel, which it is. It is the true capital. And again, that's really controversial, especially among Christians and the world. But you know what? I just want to speak the truth. Jerusalem is Israel's capital. It's simple. So here we go. So what was God doing? He was getting out a shofar, a trumpet call, to get the world's attention. And I believe that Trump is a type of Cyrus. And again, I did another talk about this whole thing. And yet God is saying, look at my man. This is my man. And if he used Nebuchadnezzar, he can certainly use Donald Trump. But what a lot of people forget about is what Donald Trump did in his first 3 days of office. First 3 days, and we don't get this reported to us, he banned all foreign aid to bring about abortion in all the third world countries. He abandoned it. Millions and millions and millions of dollars. He says, we're not spending a penny. After 3 days. After 1 week, he said, we're not going to spend $700 million or thereabouts on the ferment of the F-35 fighter plane. Because why? He was cleaning up the swamp. Because the only people that are profiting are cronies. That are, for me, the elite. And I don't believe that Donald Trump, was going to allow that. And then also what was he did, and this is all within months of him taking office, within weeks, he stopped the transgender debate within schools, saying that every school must have a transgender toilet. That's ridiculous. It goes against the ordinance of God. And so how many Christian schools, especially in America, that were due to be closed because they wouldn't recognise, some of them wouldn't recognise the transgender agenda that was going on within America. But how many of them would have closed without Donald Trump? See, Donald Trump, you can criticise him as much as you want, but I believe he is God's man. So, moving swiftly on. See, we've had past blood moons and we've had past super moons, but here it is, folks. We had what we call a tetrad of 2014 and 15 of these blood moons in 2014-15. People said, well, what happened? Nothing happened. And then you can say, well, what about the Revelation 12 star? That was another blood moon that had a constellation of stars that were over Jerusalem. The whole thing of Virgo and the 12 stars above her and the moon at her feet, perfectly describing Revelation 12. Nothing happened. Well, hang on a sec. What happened in 2015 after that? The rise of ISIS. We've had world terrorism like we've never seen before. And yet the church says, nothing happened. In fact, the papers are saying, nothing happened. Of course it did. The world has never been the same since 2015. So here's another thing. What happened in 2017? Well, look at Syria. How Syria and Russia and Iran and all of these things all happening in the Middle East. You would never have seen that in 2014. But I believe these blood red moons are significant, showing us times and events I can't even have time to go into what's happened within the church. You know, because Revelation 12, you know, it describes the birthing of a man-child out of Jupiter. Well, Jupiter comes into Virgo, the Virgin, comes into her belly and stays there for how long? 9 months, and then comes through her legs. It's a perfect description of a birthing. Who's it a birthing of? It's a birthing of a people that will be about the kingdom. Not about church, but about the kingdom. I get quite excited about this. So swiftly moving on. And so I want to go into what does it signify? This blood red moon that happened on the 21st, 22nd of January, and the supermoons of February and March. What does it all mean? Well, I think, again, it means something about the world. I think it's significant to the Middle East, especially the whole Israel events and everything around there. And it's to the true church. So let's have a look at the world. Well, it's not very hard. There are going to be huge calamities coming on the world. It's judgment. It is judgment. See, God is a loving God, but he's also a God full of justice. On the bottom of his throne room, it says righteousness and judgment. You know, and or justice, you know, and so therefore, you know, God is a just God. He really is, and everything that God does, he does for redemption, you know, for a calling out, for people to take heed of. And then I believe that we'll see tsunamis and earthquakes and the eruptions of volcanoes, and there's going to be a wave of protests, as we're seeing in France with the yellow vests, a wave of protest against the establishments of governments. I mean, look at Macron. Now, keep your eyes on Macron. I am not saying he is the Antichrist, but without a shadow of a doubt, he came out of nowhere. Where did he come from? He came out, he was a financial guy within the Rothschilds. That should, something should go on. You know, Macron is a pawn, but he is not the Antichrist. That's my opinion. He is a pawn, but he is trying to control the laity, the people, the deeds of the Nicolaiti that God hates. It's control of the people, and we're going to see people start saying no to all of this and the things of what governments are going to try and bring on to us, which is the beginnings of a world order. Like in the UK, we're seeing Brexit. It's divided this country. But here it is, folks, Spitfire. I believe that we are in our darkest hour. You know, if you've seen the film, The Darkest Hour, Winston Churchill, Winston Churchill bringing this country through its darkest hour. And the Spitfire was one of them. Dunkirk was the other. And this is what we're doing, is we do not want to be associated with a Babylon system of Europe. It's spiritual. It's not a physical, it's a spiritual thing. And most of the church are dead to this. It's an Antichrist system, that the Antichrist will just come and take his place in the EU, and we want to be out of it because we want the UK to be a beacon of light to when Europe gets its darkest. Churchill said these incredible words. He was quoted on the radio. He said, "Never, never has so much been owed by so many to so few." And these were talking about the Spitfire pilots that got to jump in their planes. And there were so few of them. And this is the Rolls-Royce, the Merlin engine, that's part of the UK. And it was so many. The people owed so much to these young men that got in these planes. And I believe this was a supernatural thing of God to allow this country to remain the light for Europe. I mean, look what happened. 6 million Jews being murdered by this demonic, demonized man called Hitler. The same's going to come, folks. The same thing is going to come, not just in Europe, but on the world. It is right for him to come and step into his place right now. We're about to see this. So I want to move swiftly on, because also there's an alignment of 3 stars. There is Venus, which is basically at the top, and Jupiter at the bottom. But off to the right, there's another star. And this star is just literally off to the right-hand side. And it's called Aterius. And this is a star that is beneath the constellation of Scorpio. It's under the heel. But I'll come to that because it's significant that we understand this star. Because Venus is known as the bright morning star. And when Jupiter and Venus comes together, they create what we know as the Bethlehem star. And here's another point. Nothing happened. Well, when the Bethlehem star happened in the birth and around the birth of Jesus, within the first 2 years of his birth, the Magi, followed this star, and it was the Bethlehem. It was Jupiter and Venus together. Follow the star, and happened. But you know what? The world would have said, well, what are you doing? What are you bringing gold, frankincense? Oh, to a king. Oh, but you found the king in where? A cattle shed? Amongst all the sheep droppings and poo and all the rest of it. You found the king? Get away. You're complete. Doesn't that sound like the newspapers today, the media? It's just a load of absolute cow poo. Well, no, actually, it's very significant. The King of Kings was born. The one that we love, the God of Abraham, Isaac and Jacob, Jesus, the Son of God, was born on that day. And we were excited because we know the bigger picture. But in that day, it was just the Virgin Mary and Joseph, a young couple who give birth. And they didn't really understand the significance of what was happening. But this is so the world has no excuse. But it was first as signs and signals. And that wasn't a dress rehearsal when he was born. But swiftly moving on. So what are we going to see in Israel? Well, here it is. Psalm 89 says these words. It says, my covenant. This is God speaking about Israel. So all those people who are replacement theology, that the church has replaced Israel, you are so wrong. You are so wrong. But I want to say that really gently. But it says here, listen, Romans, when Paul wrote about this in Romans 10 to 12, was about this whole subject. He was saying, there's no way that you can say that God is going to replace Israel. Listen to what God says. He says in Psalm 89, verse 34 and 37, my covenant, this is God's covenant, I will not break, nor alter the word that has gone out of my lips. Once I have sworn by my holiness, I will not lie to David, King David, Israel. His seed shall endure forever, and his throne as the sun before me. It shall be established forever like the moon, even like the faithful witness in the sky. Right, so here we come to another thing. Folks, when is this going to happen? When we have a look at the blood moons and the supermoons. We have a look at that. When does this happen? Well, we know that the first moon has gone past in January. And then we know that, but hang on a sec, this is what got me thinking. What was this blood moon? Well, it's the same thing in the inauguration of, and last year, of Donald Trump. It was on a feast. And what feast was it? Well, New Year of Trees. Because it was talking about the almonds being the first budding on the tree around this time in the spring. It was the budding of the almond. Aaron put his rod into the Ark of the Covenant with all the other people, putting their stars and rods in there. And Aaron's was the only one to come out. What with? Fruit and the budding of almonds. And that is again speaking about God birthing something as first fruits. And I want to come on to that. So here we go, folks. I definitely feel that we're on the brink of war in Israel. I absolutely, with all certainty, believe there is something going to happen where the Israeli army, the IDF, are going to have to do something about Iran, and especially in Syria, and that whole thing. But it says here in this, it says in Zechariah 1 verse 7 and 8, on the 24th day of the 11th month, which is the month of Shabbat, the same month of the birthing of new trees. It's the same month. In the second year of Darius, the word of the Lord came to Zechariah. And it says, I saw by night, behold, a man riding on a red horse. And it stood among the myrtle trees in the holland. Behind him were the horses, red, sorrel, and white. Well, we see the red horse going forth in Revelation, the book of Revelation. It's the red horse that goes away to take away peace through war. And I believe the war is coming to Israel. Coming to Israel. And we've got to be ready for that. But I believe this war will allow two things. Listen to me. It will allow two things. It will allow Israel to take back land. They will take back land. and it will allow them to rebuild or to build the third temple. That is what we're about to see. And this is what I think prophetically, we're declaring here. This is what we're going to see. So, right, we see the second moon, the second supermoon. It's a supermoon, but it's the biggest and the brightest of the three moons. And it comes slap bang in the middle of these three moons. And the third moon, again, is a supermoon. But guess what it falls on? And we're talking about Israel. It's the Feast of Lots. It's Purim. Pure meaning lots. It's when Haman was throwing the lots of when to find out the day that he was going to massacre all of the Jews under Xerxes, under the Persian Empire, who were ruling from Sura in southwest Iran, in modern day southwest Iran. And all this is, looking at Haman and the whole thing with Mordecai, and definitely with what Mordecai discovered. He's discovered Haman's plot to not just kill all the Jews, but also to eradicate and kill the king. And we know Esther. Esther, you've been born for such a time as this. I again prophetically are saying there are people out there, there's a remnant coming. You've been born for such a time as this. This is our time. This is when we will start uncovering the plots of Haman. And Haman is, I believe, a prophetic link to Hamas. Hamas in the Gaza, and also Hamas in the Western Bank. They've got a direct link. I believe there is going to be a plot unfold, come from out of darkness into light that is going to allow the Israelis prepare for a war that's going to destroy Hamas. And it falls, the third supermoon in March falls on the Feast of Purim. Again, I think it's speaking prophetically. But what's it now saying? We know the story that Haman, is then executed with all of his sons, and Xerxes marries Esther, and Mordecai is established, and I believe it's exactly that. Israel is going to come out of this really well, really well. So what about the church? Well, I believe from last year, the preaching, it was a watch season, to watch and see what was going to happen. Look at Syria, look at the Middle East, look what's happening over here, especially here, in the UK with Brexit. Look what's happening in America with Trump. It's divided the nations. Nations are divided. Look at Syria. Look at the war that's happening there that's killed hundreds of thousands of people. Look at the systematic murder of Christians in the Middle East, in Iran and Syria and all around and what we're seeing. We saw Al-Shabaab, in the middle of Kenya, in a real busy area, go into a hotel and start systematically killing people. But look what happened. One man, an SAS that was off duty, he was training their security forces. He had all of his gear in the back of his car, and one man went in there and organised, to go in there and kill the Al-Shabaab people, and just one man. He organised it all, and not just, I think there was something like 16 or 18 people that were murdered, but how many more would have been murdered had that one man not gone in? And again, I think SAS, God's got his secret SAS people ready to take position in the time when the trouble breaks us out. And I believe this is what it's saying to the church. But I want to come on to another thing. I think that there's a hidden generation, a first fruit, a remnant, trailblazers, whatever you want to call them. These are the people that are just saying, God, I want to glorify your Son. I want to build and establish the kingdom on earth. It says in Isaiah 49 verses 1 to 3, listen, O coastlands, to me, and take heed, you people from afar. The Lord has called me from the womb, from the matrix of my mother. He has made mention of my name and your name, and he has made my mouth like a sharp sword. In the shadow of his hand he has hidden me. He has made me a polished shaft. In his quiver he has hidden me. He has said to me, you are my servant Israel, in whom I will be glorified. God has hidden us. So when we come out and he puts us in his bow and he puts us where he wants us to be, we will bring glory to his name. And Titus 2 in verse 13 and 14. looking for the blessed hope, the glorious appearing of our great God and Saviour Jesus Christ, who gave himself for us, that he might redeem us from every lawless deed and purify for himself his own special people, zealous for good works. Not the good works that bring glory on us, but the good works that bring glory on the kingdom. It's establishing the kingdom. 1 Peter 2 verse 9. For you are a chosen generation, just like Esther. We are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, his own special people, that you may proclaim the praise of him who has called you out of darkness into his marvellous light. And then we have Isaiah 61 verse 3. To console those who mourn in Zion, to give them beauty out of the ashes, the oil of joy in the morning, the garment of praise from the spirit of heaviness, that they might be called trees of righteousness, the planting of the Lord, that he may be glorified. This is all about a body of people that will bring glory to the one name above all names, and his name is Jesus. And one day every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that. But he will have a special people, a hidden people, that will do this. And I believe that we're about to see this. Malachi 4 verse 5. Behold, I send you out Elijah the prophet. Elijah, the spirit of Elijah the prophet is going to come upon these people. And I believe the same spirit of Moses is going to come on these people to great signs and wonders before the coming and the great and dreadful day of the Lord and his return. And I believe that's what we're seeing. But this brings me into Venus and Jupiter, which happened on the 22nd of January. It's a constellation that we know as the Bethlehem star. And significant about that is Venus is above and Jupiter is below. And as the day goes on and the week goes on, they separate. And one goes north and one goes south, because he is my true north. He is my true north, because Jupiter has been birthed out of Virgo, but it's humble for those that humble themselves before the Lord. These are the ones. Jupiter is lying at the feet of Venus, the bright and morning star. And we see Jesus calling himself this in Revelation 20:22. Behold, I am the bright morning star. So Jesus is saying, I am Venus, I am this bright morning star. But it's those that have humbled themselves, man, he is glorified. He is lifted up. So when we make ourselves lower, he will be glorified higher. So I believe this is the significance of those body of people who said, Jesus, you're my number one. You are my number one. Because guess what, folks? We do not see this happening again. And they say that when it's Venus and Jupiter get as close as this, they say in this term it's like an applause. They applaud each other. You know, it's just so close. But they only get this close once every 24 years and 1 week. Wow. 24. Go and have a look what it says. The 24 elders. 1 week. The 1 week of Daniel. Could this be signifying that there's been the 24 elders have made a decision up in heaven? This is it. This is the end of time as we know it. And that there is the last week of Daniel coming on, on the earth. Could it be meaning that? I don't know. I've got an idea it might be. Because we're near that last week. But I don't believe that we're going to see this constellation again in our lifetime. Matthew 24, the parable of the fig tree. This generation will by no means pass away until these events have taken place. It's incredible. So, but I want to say that, this context of astronomical constellations, and this is what people say, don't get worried about, this is God's, because it says, Psalm 147 verse 4, he counts the numbers of stars and he calls them by name. So God called these, and we've got to get into our heads that God puts these things as signs and wonders for us to say, Lord, what do you say? And this is it. That star that's over to the right hand side of this constellation is Antares, which is the constellation of Scorpio. But where do we see this in the Bible? Well, we see this in Genesis 3:15. I will put an enmity between you and the woman, between you and your seed. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. And so this constellation means there is a war happening in heaven. Because when these two come together, there is a war between the Jesus Christ and and Satan. So there is a war. There is a war happening in the heavens. And what's it over? Us, the hidden ones, the remnant coming forth. And so this is a conflict between Christ and Satan. And so here goes. What does Venus mean? Well, we know it means the bright morning star. It's using the Mazzaroth. The Mazzaroth was an ancient manuscript that would name the stars and have the names and the meanings of these stars. And Venus means the bright morning star, which is Jesus. It's pointing to Jesus, totally. And Jupiter means justice, or the God that sends help. There is justice coming to this remnant company of people. God is going to send help so that he may be glorified, because they part going north and south. And I believe this body of people will be with the spirit of Moses and Elijah, doing the wonders and the signs and the miracles, because they'll be doing it to make him, Jesus, look good. Not ourselves. Not ourselves. So, folks, this whole thing about Jupiter and Venus being so close together, this is what the Lord said. I heard his audible voice. It's saying, the bride is to have no other love other than the bridegroom. Because this is the closest they've ever been, and we won't see it again in our lifetime, I believe. But this is where the bride will have no other love above the bridegroom. This is the Revelation 14. This is the 144,000 that are called and redeemed out of man, that will follow the Lamb wherever he goes, but they learn a new song in heaven. We've never been this way before, church, or kingdom builders. We've never been this way before. But here's what I felt the Lord say about this whole thing. He said, I, the Lord, will deliver justice to my bride, who will arise and shine like never before throughout the whole of the years that have gone by. And I will be above her, watching and delivering my plans and my purposes for my bride, as she has humbled herself before me, because she is my bride, and I am her bridegroom. I will arise above her, and she will shine for me. This is my battle, declares the Lord. And I have already had my victory over the evil one, and he has lost his sting over me and over her. She will now begin to destroy the works of the enemy, and she will arise with healing in her wings. And I have heard her cry for righteousness, and I have heard it from my place in heaven. And I will forgive their sin and begin to heal their land. She has humbled herself, and I will do as she has asked. I am the Alpha, the North and the South, the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, and I am coming soon. And that is what I believe the Lord is saying over this whole constellation of Jupiter and Venus. That's my interpretation. Now I'd like to see what yours is and draw this to an end. Please, folks, study it for yourselves. Don't take my word. That's what I always challenge you. Study the word for yourself. Now, I haven't been on YouTube. I haven't been on finding out what other people are saying, about this. I just wanted to have it. It is for me, from the purity of my heart. I've just said, Holy Spirit, speak through me. Now, I believe this is a prophetic message, especially for the Western Europe, the Western world, for America and the UK and Europe. It's going to get dark, but we're going to get brighter. So I want to bless you. I want to bring this to an end. I want God to touch you, because if you are watching this, you are a special one. You are called for such a time as this. You are an Esther. You are that person that God is going to bring out of his quiver. You've been hidden for such a time as this. And I just pray, Lord, may we bring glory to your name, where we raise the name of Jesus into all of the lights. And Lord, let us humble ourselves before you, that we will not touch this glory, but we will be undone out of a love for you, because this bride knows there is no other love apart from you. God bless you, God keep you, and may God have his hand upon you and your household. Amen.